I absolutely knew it. I sighed quietly to myself as I raised my phone to memorialize the occasion before quietly walking away. I'd expected to catch her in a lie, not the act. There was no coming back from this. Not now. We weren't going to survive this. Tracy. Nominative determinism at its finest. I should have known better than to marry a blonde whose name ended in an I. Folks who give their children unconventional names aren't in the business of imparting sturdy moral worldviews. She arrived home more than an hour after I did and gave her usual cheerful "Hiya" as she bounced through the door like butter wouldn't melt. I was half watching one of those also-ran game shows which feature about as much skill as a game of snakes and ladders as I stewed in my own thoughts. I didn't acknowledge her, and she didn't notice. Lost in her own world of foolishness, as had become normal in recent weeks. As the game show host babbled about the amazing prize on offer in the background, I distantly heard her dump her purse on the kitchen counter with a careless thud. 1 month? I had to give it to the guy. He worked fast. By my estimation, she'd made it less than 4 weeks before giving it all up to him. I'd watched in the background, first with concern, then fury, then finally resignation, curious as to how things would play out before I got sick of waiting for the other shoe to drop. This was the week I'd decided it was time to both get some personal closure before pulling back the final curtain on the whole stupid charade, just short of her being 2 months into her new job. I'd laughingly joked about it with her when she took the position. The old stereotype of secretaries having affairs with their bosses, working as a paralegal in a mid-sized law firm, meant that there was the possibility for watching office shenanigans to play out, and we'd laughed about people carrying on behind closed doors. I'd made her promise to keep me up to date with the office gossip, although I'd originally intended it as a way to keep connected with her. I put on my game face. Time for my experience in business-to-business sales to pay off. Never challenge their beliefs and preconceptions. Some drunk executive starts prattling on about his inappropriate behavior. You come back with a "you rascal you" or similar. They blurt out shockingly inappropriate gibberish. Don't even blink. Smile, nod, change the subject. Any more gossip at the office recently? I asked loudly, with my head turned toward the kitchen. Nah, well, not that I know of anyway, Tracy replied, wandering into the lounge. It's mostly paperwork, meetings, and research, not non-stop Mexican telenovela action. Oh, come on. I know you've only been there, 7 weeks now? But there's a steep power gradient in that office. Foolish secretaries having affairs with their married bosses is a stereotype for a reason, I stated, noticing a slight hitch in her movement when I said it before I pivoted to disarm her. What about that girl? What's her name, Stephanie? Didn't you say it looked like she was up to something with one of the junior partners? Nope. Turns out it was nothing, she replied, settling down onto the other end of the couch in her white blouse and pencil skirt and stretching out her stockinged feet. Or if it is, it's on the super down low. Turns out she's got a boyfriend. Doesn't shut up about him. She really loves him. I glanced over at her with a raised eyebrow. The blouse was a little translucent, form-fitting, and a little low-cut for office wear. That had started 2 weeks in. I'd noticed her outfits got a lot more revealing around that time. That, and a transition from flats to heels, and a slightly raised hemline. In hindsight, it was obvious, but initially, I'd figured she'd just relaxed into the dress code a little after getting used to the vibe. That's normal when starting a new job. It's better to be over-formal initially and adjust to the vibe, rather than to underdress and set a bad impression. Well, it's probably for the best, I said after a moment, adding, there's a reason they say you shouldn't mix business with pleasure after all. It's a shame for you and me, though. What do you mean? She asked with a smirk. About what? The mixing thing or the shame? I asked, watching her frown out of the corner of my eye. Well, both, I guess. I had her. Time to turn the screw. Well, it's a nice little self-sabotaging trap, isn't it? But on the other hand, it'd be fun to watch it happen to some naive, gullible woman from a safe distance, or in my case, hear about it. In a dark way, anyway. Listen to it play out in real time, get out the office affair bingo card, and all that. A trap? She echoed. I nodded, still pretending to stare at the TV. Oh yeah, a real nasty one. The boss lays it on thick with the manipulation moves, showing off and talking himself up, complimenting the naive girl and carefully invading her personal space. Maybe some getting-to-know-you after-hours drinks, talk some nonsense about her current partner, and suddenly he's got her completely under his control, and he owns her. It's a deal with the devil. I don't see how that means he owns her, Trace said with a quiet but hard tone. It just sounds like a run-of-the-mill office fling. Well, think about it. I mean, take that boss of yours, the senior partner. James something? There was an awkward pause before she eventually replied, McMasters, as if she'd mysteriously forgotten her boss's surname. Okay. Well, you said old Jimmy's married, with kids, right? So if he was baiting the trap, he'd probably say how the marriage is on the rocks. Talk about his difficult, nagging wife who doesn't appreciate him, I said, wagging my finger in a pantomime of an angry housewife. All lies, of course. He'll never leave her. He's just trying to get into some naive woman's good graces, I said pointedly, taking a swing at some of the lines he'd likely used. Based on the way she awkwardly tensed up in my peripheral vision, it was a solid hit. Theoretically, I mean, I added. I know you'd be telling me all about his awful home life if he was trying that line on you. After all my requests for hot gossip, I paused, her silence speaking volumes. I mean, that's why I keep asking about it. My work is a fraternity-like environment. Half the guys spend their spare time hitting on our middle-aged receptionist Olivia, apart from the few brave, deluded fools who go to bat for the boss's wife. They're always bragging about this tacky stuff to me. It's all beer, women, and sports. I'm sick of it. Yeah, you've said, she added dismissively, having a second-hand reaction to the nonsense I hear every day. I'd hate it there. But it does mean I've had a masterclass in scumbag manipulation tactics, I grinned at her. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. Once she's involved with him, what happens next? She's a liability, a danger to both his job and his marriage. There's no way a smart lawyer like him wouldn't cover his bases. He'd either forge some paperwork documenting poor performance, or actually, yeah, probably he'd just overtly do it. Tell the poor gullible woman about needing to maintain appearances, to be seen not to be playing favorites, and have her sign the write-up and manipulate her in the same darn meeting. I saw her flinch slightly beside me, another palpable hit. How naive could she be? Well, infatuation and foolishness famously go hand in hand, I guess. She eventually said, that sounds a bit far-fetched. Yeah, calculating. Anyway, work and play are two different things. Why would he bother? Ah, but don't you see? That means he can fire her for cause, throw her out on her rear at a moment's notice, and no one will question it. Now she's just a disaffected employee spreading lies to cause trouble. The second she tries to end it, what do you think happens? I don't know. It seems a bit ridiculous. I don't think anyone's that calculating and cynical. A senior partner, not calculating and cynical? How do you think you make senior partner honest work and persistence? It's all politics and backstabbing at the top of the heap, but if you don't want to believe that, that's okay. Anyway, one of three things happens. 1, I announced, looking her in the eye and raising my index finger. Fired with no reference and a dark cloud over her. Career over. 2, I raised a second finger. She rides it out while he manipulates her. He gets bored of her, then bam, fired for cause again. Finally, 3, I raised the last one with an evil grin. She wises up and accepts her situation with him while applying for positions elsewhere. One way or another, she's either an unwilling victim or a failure, ruined, literally or metaphorically. Humph, was all she had to say to that uncomfortable truth. So yeah, it's dark, but that's the reality. And that's why all the big companies have anti-fraternization policies these days. Heck, that's why the military's so hard on infidelity, too. Although I hear some folks are into it. It's a control thing called power play, if I remember correctly. Well, she said after a long pause, her voice barely above a whisper. Like I told you, there's nothing like that going on. I gave a short chuckle, finally adding, and like I said, it's a shame. It'd be kind of funny to hear about the details secondhand. What was it you said? Oh yeah, telenovela-like. I'm starved for drama. I left it at that for the time being. An ugly little lump of raw, awful truth for her to digest while I thought about the next step. That night, we both lay in bed with our backs toward each other, miles apart. Anger and hate were radiating from me, and I'm surprised she couldn't feel it. I could certainly feel her newfound guilt and uncertainty. Sleep came slowly, and I could tell the same was true for her, and I think she spent a long time staring at the darkness that night, trapped by her own choices. She didn't know it then, but it was her last chance. Just one well-chosen word might have been enough. Something with remorse, regret, or even an expression of love. An expression of contrition, something tangible. But no, she said nothing. I knew by the morning she'd managed to minimize what I'd said because the alternative was too real and too horrifying. But I also knew it'd take the shine off the sneaking around, and based on her earlier reactions, the potential outcomes I'd predicted would haunt her. She'd be left with the foolish idea that she had some decisions to make. The following day's outfit was a lot less revealing. Much too little, and far too late, my love. That's just playing hard to get. You'll convince yourself it worked and be back at it in a day or so. Heck, he'll probably enjoy seducing you into resuming the affair, but he won't have to try very hard. I went along with her charade and returned to acting the part of the loving, oblivious husband, but within 2 hours I was ringing a doorbell, envelope in hand. A decidedly attractive and pleasant woman answered the door with a yes to my Mrs. Weston. I said, "Looks like your husband's going to have to fire his assistant again, I'm afraid," as I handed the envelope to her, adding, "I don't know how you put up with it," before saying, "Good day, ma'am," turning around and leaving. There's no kind way to do these things, and she's not my concern. It was cruel, but I'm pretty sure the poor, shocked woman knew what I was implying, because her expression had hardened after a moment as her hand tightened on the paper. The last part in particular was another educated guess, but he was too quick and smooth for it to be the first time. He probably had Tracy planned for inappropriate duties from her very first interview. When I glanced over before starting my car, she'd taken the picture out and was looking down at it with a dark expression. Seeing her loving husband embracing my loving wife in his office will do that to a person. Tracy came home early that afternoon, and she looked decidedly unhappy. I wasn't there, of course. Why would I be? We didn't have kids. Our finances were separate, and the apartment was month to month. I'd spent a couple of hours packing up the remains of my life and loading it into my car. By the time I got the alert on my phone, I was already sat in Davy's kitchen, complaining to his heavily pregnant wife Alyssa about my soon-to-be ex. They'd said I could crash on an air mattress in their nursery for a month or two. There was a pretty obvious hard deadline on that, but I was very grateful for their charity, and it would be enough. We watched her little walk of shame together my phone when I got the notification from our door camera. Tracy had wanted one of those smart security systems marketed through paranoia disguised as convenience, but I hadn't cared enough to argue about it. I have to admit that it earned its keep that day. She sat in the driveway for a full 5 minutes before climbing out of the car. When she finally did, she moved slowly, her shoulders hunched and head hanging low, shuffling to the front door like a guilty drunk. She stopped there for a while, too, before fishing the key out of her purse. I think she might have been expecting an "I told you so" welcome on the other side. She certainly must have had her doubts when she left for work, so she surely knew I was aware of what she'd been up to by the time she entered the house. After that, She didn't look surprised as she passed into the lounge and walked up to the photo taped to the wall. She just stood and looked blankly at it before eventually shuffling away. Alyssa laughed through the whole thing, along with a mocking running commentary which made me feel a tiny bit better. It was obvious how things had approximately played out, and I felt a little twinge of smug satisfaction about my act of prognostication the night before. I never found out how things played out for Weston and his poor wife, because I never asked. I didn't care. Why should I? He wasn't the one I was married to. That was Mrs. Weston's cross to bear. I got myself a new place fairly quickly and furnished it to the single lonely bachelor aesthetic just as fast. The secret is low standards. Buried myself in my work. Pestered my friends to hang out more than normal. All the usual stuff. I still ended up missing her in the small hours of the night when sleep escaped me. But in the light of day, I always recognized that I'd given it my best and spent more time and effort on her than I should have. I'm sure I have my failings as a partner, but I didn't deserve what I got in return. At least I'd managed to escape with some tattered remnants of my pride and self-respect intact. I did eventually have a sit-down conversation with her after about a month, but it wasn't for her sake, or for mine. I'm of the opinion that closure is for grieving relatives, not cheating spouses, so it was appropriate in a way. I did it for her parents, my father and mother-in-law. They'd always been kind to me, and although she hadn't told them exactly what happened, they'd both quickly joined the dots between her losing both her husband and her job on the same day, and had decided they didn't need any more information. But they wanted me to talk to her face-to-face and at least end it properly. Get her to move on. I was still hurting, but I agreed for their sake. At their place, her dad greeted me warmly but sadly at the front door and escorted me through to their dining room before making himself scarce. She looked defeated, a sallow complexion, baggy sweats and t-shirt, and a sad frown. We sat across from each other at the table in silence for a long time before she eventually started. "It happened nearly the way you said it would," she said, never raising her gaze from her hands, splayed on the wooden tabletop. "I've messed it all up, haven't I?" "You think?" I snapped, before getting a grip on myself and starting again. "Look, the second you became involved with him, we were over." "You must have known that." She tried to defend herself, but even after a month, the best she had was, I didn't want—" "Oh, please," I interrupted more calmly than she deserved. "Don't. Do us both a favor and don't make excuses. A part of you had to have known. You got involved with him so quick it was like you were rushing into it. Your poor lonely little Jim talked his way in so fast I'm surprised he had time to plan it properly." I shook my head. "Anyway, you only made it, what, 3-4 weeks without getting caught because I thought we were stronger than that. I had more confidence in us than I should have. You might as well have been texting me the photos yourself, it was so obvious. You're terrible at being a cheater. You've got too many tells. You should stick to being honest. I thought we were stronger than that too. It was just something exciting. Things got out of hand and I was kind to you, you know," I interrupted. "I had plans. Workable revenge fantasies. I could have made the end a lot more exciting than it was. I even seriously thought about sabotaging your birth control. I had it in my hands." Her eyes went wide at the idea. "Your affection at home fell off a cliff pretty quickly, so I figured you wouldn't even notice if I played the happy celibate roommate for a few months. Have the divorce papers served in the maternity ward. But instead, right up until the end, even though I hated you for what you were doing to me, to us, I was giving you a way out." All she said was, "I was going to end it." "No, you weren't," I said with a hard tone. "Maybe that's what you told yourself, probably a few times, but it's a lie." "No, I really was. I knew it was wrong, and I really did know what I was doing was bad," she said, looking up at me with sad, narrowed eyes. "I saw you. That wasn't an ending it face you had on when he was embracing you in his office. I already figured out you were having an affair with him, but when I saw it, I had just wanted to catch you in a big lie, something concrete I could point to. I didn't actually expect to see what I saw. I'm sorry you saw that." She looked away. "It was just physical. Please at least know that. That's another one of those untruths people tell themselves. If it was just physical, then you'd have been cheating on me with a machine. How did it feel to have a spicy little secret? To have something over me? Thinking he doesn't know, and look at me while you could still feel satisfied by him? Knowing you know something I don't." Her eyes widened, and I think she recognized a nasty piece of herself she hadn't quite seen before. "Well, I was still trying to give you a chance, even after knowing all that," I said. "Even after I said how it would play out. I know that rattled you, if you'd owned up to it right then and there, thrown yourself at my mercy. I would have been willing to try. You knew then, really, didn't you? But it would have been a desperate attempt at that point. I don't think I could have by then, even if I wanted to. Not after seeing it." "Is there really not any chance?" she asked with a pleading look. Honestly, there wasn't any real hope in her eyes, but I think she needed to ask, just to be sure. "No," I said sadly. "Okay," was her only reply as she hung her head again. After a moment, she half mumbled toward the floor, "I had to ask. I am sorry, you know. Sorry about the whole thing, every second. I don't know what was going on with me then. It was like I went insane, like I was trapped in a different reality. But I want you to know I'm sorry." She looked up at me then, with wide, anguished eyes, and said, "I know it doesn't mean anything, 'cause I can't take it back, but I'm sorry." And that was the end of it. I went to say goodbye to her parents after that, and her mother looked hopeful, as if we could reconcile. She asked if I was going to stay for dinner. Her father knew better, I think. He gently shook his head at her, even before I gave my apologies. Nothing was somehow going to magically heal the wound Tracy had ripped through our marriage with simple words. Her dad said, "Thank you for humoring us. Good luck," before he closed the door. We agreed to a simple, uncontested divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. There wasn't any point dragging things out. There weren't significant assets to fight over, and there wasn't a reason to be in the same room with her ever again. About 6 months after that, I saw her working the register at a grocery store. She looked thinner but healthier, and certainly happier than during that last talk. Honestly, I was surprised to see her, though. She has a degree. She could have just erased the job from her resume and relocated, started over somewhere else with a clean slate. I guess making suboptimal life choices might be a habit of hers I hadn't noticed up until that point. Heck, maybe I was one of them. Unfortunate for her, I guess. As for me, by that point, I'd just about put her behind me, emotionally. I had a good job, I had a promising new girlfriend, and most importantly, I had a divorce. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.